I wasn't supposed to be back in town until next week. The flight landed early, and on a whim, I decided to surprise everyone. My mom had mentioned a small get-together at her house. Something low-key. She said it was for my aunt's birthday. That was a lie. I parked 2 blocks away, habit from growing up in a neighborhood where street parking during parties was war, and walked the rest of the way. My mom's porch was covered in pastel balloons. A giant white and gold banner fluttered over the doorway. "Welcome, baby Aurora." My stomach turned before I even stepped inside. Music was playing. People were laughing. I recognized the sound of my cousin giggling in the kitchen. I pushed the door open slowly and froze. There, in the middle of the living room, glowing like some Hallmark scene, stood my former best friend, Lila, visibly 6 months pregnant. My mother-in-law, Trudy, was fawning over her belly like it held royalty. My own mother poured champagne like she was hosting the damn Oscars. And then I saw him. Noah, my husband. He walked in from the hallway carrying a tray of cupcakes. I watched, frozen, blinking, numb, as he walked up behind Lila, placed a hand on her belly, and kissed her cheek. "We just finished the nursery," she said proudly to someone. Noah painted the whole thing by hand. My mom spotted me then. Her face went pale. She set down the bottle, rushed toward me like I was a problem that needed to be cleaned up. "Eva," she whispered, clutching my arm, "we didn't know you were coming home today. Let's step outside for a second." I yanked my arm away. "Don't touch me." The room fell silent. Slowly, faces turned toward me. Lila gasped like she'd seen a ghost. Noah looked like someone had yanked the floor out from under him. "Eva," he said, stepping forward, "please let me explain." "Explain?" I laughed. "You want to explain how my best friend is carrying your child?" While I was working 10,000 miles away, no one moved. No one spoke. Even my father, standing uselessly in the corner, avoided my eyes. Lila's voice shook. "Eva, we didn't want you to find out this way." "Oh, really? Were you planning to send me an invite to the birth? Or maybe just send me a baby photo captioned, 'Surprise? It's Noah's.'" Trudy stepped in like she owned the place. "Eva, please. This kind of stress is bad for Lila. She's pregnant." I snapped. "Oh, now you care about someone's pregnancy? Where was this energy when I lost our baby 2 years ago and spent 3 days in the hospital alone while you were all playing house with my husband?" Gasps. Nobody said a word. I could hear my own heartbeat over the music still playing faintly in the background. My mom tried again. "Honey, it's not that simple." I turned to her, seething. "No, Mom. It's exactly that simple. I worked myself into burnout for this family while you all played dumb and kept this betrayal hidden." Noah stepped toward me. "Eva, let's talk outside. Don't do this here." "Why not?" I said loudly. "Afraid I'll ruin the ambiance of your baby celebration? Or is this the part where you explain how you convinced me to take that overseas contract so you could have an affair in peace?" I turned to Lila. "Did he tell you that? That he was oh so lonely and abandoned while I was out making sure we could pay our mortgage?" She wiped tears from her face. "It wasn't like that. We didn't plan this. No one plans betrayal, Lila. You chose it." I saw people shifting uncomfortably, some already picking up their bags. The truth was sour in the air. Nobody could pretend anymore. I walked over to the gift table and grabbed a random box wrapped in pink and gold. I tore it open. A tiny onesie, embroidered with Daddy's little miracle. I held it up. "Let me guess, Trudy. This was from you?" She stood. "I've heard enough. Noah needed love. You were never there. Always working. Always distant." I laughed bitterly. "Right. I was too busy funding the house where your son was screwing my best friend." I turned back to Noah. "You wanted to talk? Okay, let's talk. You won't see a cent of my money ever again. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Everything is documented. You contributed nothing. You own nothing. And from today, you get nothing." Noah's face turned ghostly pale. "I hope the two of you are ready to build a life from scratch," I added. "Because yours is no longer a part of it." And with that, I left. I didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of those people. They didn't deserve my grief. They didn't deserve me. I don't remember driving. Not the turns. Not the red lights. Just the weight of it all pressing down so hard I couldn't breathe. My phone was vibrating nonstop in the cup holder messages, calls, notifications. I didn't look. I just kept going, far enough away from that house, those faces, that betrayal. Eventually, I found myself in front of a small roadside motel with faded green curtains and a flickering vacancy sign. It wasn't glamorous, but it was empty, quiet, and just far enough from the scene of the crime. The girl at the front desk looked me over like she wanted to ask what had happened but knew better. She handed me a key without a word. Room 207, second floor. The kind of room you go to when you don't want to be found. I closed the door behind me, dropped my bag, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall. And then it hit me. All of it. The betrayal. The humiliation. The image of Noah with his hands on Lila's belly. The onesie. My mother's excuses. My father's silence. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, letting the silence crawl over me like a second skin. And then I did what I should have done months ago. I picked up the phone and called Marcus, my lawyer. Marcus had helped me draft a prenuptial agreement 3 years ago, back when I was still naive enough to believe love would be enough but smart enough to protect my assets. I told him everything. Every ugly, sordid detail. He didn't ask questions, just said, "I've got you. Come in tomorrow. We'll start the paperwork." The next morning, I was in his office with a coffee in one hand and a list in the other. A list of things that were mine. The condo, the car, the investment account, every financial record, every bank transfer. I handed over passwords, statements, and evidence. Marcus leaned back in his chair, scanning the documents with the detached expression of a surgeon preparing for a clean cut. "He has no legal claim to any of this," he said, tapping the papers. "Everything is in your name. He contributed nothing. We'll file for divorce today and notify him through formal channels. No contact needed." I nodded, sipping my coffee like it was water after a drought. "And I wanted a clause in the filing," I added, "that ensures he cannot touch a single cent, not now, not in 10 years. "Already drafted," he said. "You're not the first woman I've helped escape a man like him." That night, back in my motel room, I turned off my phone completely. I didn't want to hear his excuses or Lila's tears or my mother's desperate voice trying to spin betrayal into compassion. I needed silence. I needed space. And for once, I gave myself both. Over the next few days, I slipped into a quiet rhythm. Coffee from the same tiny cafe every morning. Long walks along the beach nearby. Late night calls with my cousin Tasha, the only family member who didn't show up to the disaster party. She was furious. They acted like it was normal. Like this was some inconvenient scheduling conflict instead of a knife to your spine. Her outrage helped me breathe. It reminded me I wasn't crazy, that what I'd seen and felt was real. That betrayal wasn't softened by intentions or disguised by parties. It was betrayal, period. On day 4, Marcus texted, "He's been served," and judging by the calls we're getting, he's not taking it well. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I already knew Noah was panicking. He had lived in the comfort of my money, my planning, my hard work for years. Now, with that foundation ripped from under him, he was drowning. And I was going to let him. 2 days later, he showed up at the cafe. I don't know how he found me. Probably one of his guilt-ridden relatives trying to play peacemaker. He looked like hell, unshaven, wrinkled shirt, the same gray hoodie I bought him last Christmas. He sat down without asking, eyes bloodshot and pleading. "Eva," he began, "please, you can't just shut me out. We need to talk." I kept stirring my coffee. "You mean now you want to talk? Not during the months you were sleeping with Lila?" He flinched. "It wasn't planned, it just happened." I finally looked at him, anger bubbling under the surface, but my voice steady. "Affairs don't just happen, Noah. Babies don't just happen. You made a choice, and now you're going to live with it." He leaned in, whispering like the words might change something. "I was lonely. You were never home. You were always working, because someone had to pay for our life," I snapped. "While you played the devoted husband with one hand and cheated with the other." He rubbed his face, exhausted. "Lila said she'd be there for me, but she doesn't understand me like you do." "Too bad," I said, standing up. "Because you lost the one person who did, and now you get to rebuild your life with her. Good luck with that." As I turned to leave, he grabbed my wrist. "Eva, I'm sorry." I shook him off. Not enough. That night, I got a message from Lila. A wall of text full of apologies, confusion, and some desperate attempt to justify her part. "We didn't mean to fall in love," she wrote. "It just got out of hand." I stared at the screen for a full minute before deleting it. No reply. No energy left to waste. The next morning, I checked out of the motel and signed the lease on a beautiful apartment downtown. Clean walls, big windows, no memories. It felt like walking into the first chapter of a new book. I spent the next week quietly moving forward, set up new accounts, changed every password, had Marcus freeze all joint credit lines. I even donated every photo, every keepsake that tied me to that version of my life. I didn't want to burn it. I didn't need a dramatic goodbye. I just needed it gone. One by one, the old pieces of me fell away until all that remained was mine. No shared memories. No hand-me-down betrayals, just me, alone, but free. And that was the first time in months I felt like I could actually breathe. Of course, that wasn't the end. Noah wasn't done trying to get back in. The next message came from my mother. "Eva, he's struggling. He's staying at Trudy's. He has nothing. Are you really going to just leave him like this?" I stared at her words, felt the familiar guilt trying to creep in, and then I laughed. Because the answer was yes. Yes, I was going to leave him like this, just like he left me emotionally gutted, humiliated, and alone. Only difference? I was stronger, and he was only just starting to feel what that emptiness was like. I didn't check in with Marcus every day, but he kept me updated anyway. Noah had started calling his office 5 times a day, ranting, begging, sometimes even crying. The man who once told me I was too emotional was now unraveling over legal documents and frozen accounts. I won't lie, it was satisfying, not in a cruel, vindictive way. More like watching a rotting structure finally collapse under its own weight. I didn't need to lift a finger. Gravity did the work. It wasn't long before Trudy, my ever-graceful former mother-in-law, decided to try her hand at guilt-tripping me. She showed up at my new building one evening, standing in the lobby like she belonged there, holding a grocery bag like she was some concerned matriarch instead of an accomplice in my humiliation. "Eva," she began, her voice sugary but tight. "I know you're hurting, but what you're doing to Noah, it's not fair. He's struggling." I smiled politely, the kind of smile you give a telemarketer right before hanging up. "He can struggle. He's earned it." Her eyes narrowed. "He has nowhere to go." "He has you," I replied, stepping past her toward the elevator. "He's your golden boy. You always wanted him to be the victim. Congratulations. Now he really is." She tried to follow me, but the door slid shut in her face before she could step in. That was the last time I saw her in person. From then on, the pleas came digitally. Emails, texts, voicemails. And not just from Noah and his mother, suddenly I was hearing from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Family friends, old co-workers, mutual acquaintances who started their messages with lines like, "Hey, I heard about what happened with Noah. He's going through a rough time. Think you could maybe help out a little?" I didn't answer. Because the truth was, no one reached out when I was the one bleeding. No one called when I was alone overseas, sending money home, paying bills I didn't even get to enjoy. No one sent comfort when my pregnancy ended in heartbreak and silence. But now that Noah was sleeping on his mother's couch and Lila was learning that diapers cost real money, suddenly I was supposed to be the merciful one. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. I poured all my energy into myself. I started going to the gym again. I reconnected with friends I had unintentionally neglected during the marriage. I even picked up painting again, something I hadn't touched in years, because I'd always felt too guilty for having a hobby that didn't contribute to our goals. And while I painted, they suffered. I didn't need revenge. Reality was handling it for me. Then came the eviction notice. The house Noah and I had once lived in, the one I paid for, the one where he played husband while playing lover to my best friend, was being foreclosed. I had officially severed all financial ties to the property, transferred full liability to his name as per our agreement. And when the first missed mortgage payment came, the bank didn't care whose fault it was. They wanted their money, and Noah didn't have it. I found out through Marcus that he tried to fight it, claimed it was unfair, claimed he had no way to pay. The judge was unmoved. Facts don't care about hurt feelings. I decided I wanted to see it. The day of the eviction, I drove by the house. Not to gloat, not to interfere, just to witness it. One final chapter closing. When I arrived, there were boxes scattered across the lawn. A couple of officers were standing near the porch. Noah was pacing on the driveway, red-faced and panicked. Lila stood beside him, visibly overwhelmed, holding her belly like it could protect her from the consequences. He saw me almost immediately. "Eva," he shouted, "you did this!" I stayed calm, hands in my coat pockets, the wind teasing my hair. "No, Noah, you did this. I just stepped out of the way and let your decisions do the talking. I lived in that house for years." He yelled, "I helped make it a home! You lived in it," I agreed. "But I paid for it. I maintained it. I paid every damn bill. You were a guest with a spare key and a full plate, not a co-owner." Lila looked at me like she expected some trace of mercy. Maybe a glimmer of the old friend who used to drop everything to bring her soup when she was sick. That version of me didn't exist anymore. She tried anyway. "Eva, please. This isn't just about us. There's a baby involved." I tilted my head. "You mean the baby you created with my husband while pretending to be my friend? That baby?" She looked away. Noah stepped forward like he was about to say something dramatic, but the officer cut him off. "Sir, time's up. You need to vacate the property now. That was it. The end." He grabbed a box, slammed the trunk of his car, and left without another word. Lila followed, still clutching her belly, her expression a mix of disbelief and anger, like the universe had broken a promise. I stood there for a moment longer, watching the door swing closed behind them. The silence that followed was more peaceful than I expected. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. Word spread fast. Family members who hadn't called me in years suddenly had a lot to say. My aunt messaged me to say she didn't agree with what I'd done. My uncle called it harsh. My mother showed up outside my building again, this time with tears in her eyes. "He's homeless, Eva. Lila's about to give birth. You can't just leave them like this." I stayed calm. "I didn't make him homeless. I stopped funding his lifestyle. There's a difference. You're being cruel," she snapped. "And you," I said, my voice hardening, "stood by while your son-in-law cheated on me, while your daughter cried herself to sleep in hotel rooms across the world, thinking she was doing all of this for a future that didn't exist. So no, Mom, I'm not cruel. I'm finally fair." She didn't respond, just shook her head and walked away like I had become someone she didn't recognize. Maybe I had, but maybe that's exactly who I needed to be. Because this wasn't just about divorce. This was about reclaiming my dignity, my peace, my life. And I wasn't about to let a single apology, guilt trip, or sob story drag me back into that darkness. Not again. Not ever. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought once the house was gone, the money cut off, and Noah humiliated in front of everyone he once deceived, they would finally disappear. I'd done my part. I'd stayed silent while karma knocked. I'd stepped back and watched life dish out what I could have never done with my own hands. But apparently, some people need to hit the ground more than once to learn it hurts. A few weeks passed. I settled into my new place, got used to waking up without the shadow of someone else's lies hanging over my bed. My mornings were quiet, my nights peaceful. No tension, no pretending, no waiting up for someone who was never really coming home. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message. Not from Noah, not from Trudy. From someone I barely remembered, an old coworker of Lila's. The message was simple. "Thought you should know. Lila's been talking about leaving him." Just like that. No explanation, no context. I didn't reply, but the words stayed with me. It wasn't that I cared about what happened between them anymore. It was the timing. The baby wasn't even born yet, and she was already looking for a way out. I didn't gloat. I didn't laugh. I just noted it the way you'd note a storm on the horizon. I didn't have to wait long for the clouds to roll in. A few days later, Marcus sent me another update. Noah was trying to challenge the divorce terms. He had filed a motion claiming he was entitled to alimony. That's right, the same man who said my career was a distraction. The same man who lived off my paychecks. He wanted money from me. Marcus laughed when he told me. I didn't. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't about the money. It was about control. About trying to claw back a piece of something he lost. Something he never earned but always believed he deserved. We fought it, obviously. With every document, every receipt, every email showing just how much I'd paid for while he played house and played me. The court shut it down fast. No alimony, no compensation. Just a firm reminder that sometimes when you burn a bridge, there's no rebuilding. That should have been his final lesson. But Noah wasn't the kind of man who learned. He was the kind who blamed, who spiraled. And Lila? She didn't have the strength to hold up a sinking ship. She filed for separation less than a month after the failed motion. Word got around through the same web of mutuals who had once sent me their passive-aggressive sympathies. One of them sent me screenshots of Lila's new posts on social media. Cryptic captions about betrayal. Hashtags about single motherhood. Comments turned off. The irony tasted cold. I kept scrolling, not out of curiosity, but because I wanted to see just how fast a castle built on lies could crumble when the scaffolding was gone. And there it was, buried in the comments before she turned them off. Someone had asked her directly, "Are you still with Noah?" She replied with a heart emoji and the words, "Sometimes love isn't enough." I stared at the screen, not with satisfaction, but with something else. A strange kind of clarity. She had betrayed me. She had broken something sacred, but she hadn't gotten away with it. Not really. Now she was alone, pregnant, tethered to a man unraveling faster than she could hold on. And she was doing what Noah had always done, playing victim when the consequences showed up. I thought back to all those nights she called me her sister. All those times I stood by her side. And now she was living in the mess she helped create. Then came the final twist. One I didn't expect, even with everything that had already happened. I got a letter, a real one, handwritten, not typed, no return address, just my name on the front in Lila's handwriting. I almost didn't open it. I almost threw it out without a second thought, but something made me rip it open anyway. Inside was a single page. No apology, no explanation, just one line. He started talking to someone else. I thought you should know. That was it. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. After everything, after the affair, the pregnancy, the drama, Noah still wasn't done looking for new distractions. He didn't want love, he wanted attention, validation. Anyone who could fill the silence that came with sitting alone in his own consequences. And Lila, the woman who once took what wasn't hers, had now become another disposable chapter in his unraveling story. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Her letter wasn't for closure. It was a breadcrumb. A desperate attempt to pull me back into a story I'd already walked out of. But I was done playing roles in other people's tragedies. My story had moved on. I had built a life beyond their reach. A life made of honesty, independence, and peace they couldn't even begin to understand. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my balcony as the sun dipped below the city skyline, and let it all go. Every name, every betrayal, every question I'd tortured myself with in the beginning. Why me? Why her? Why did no one say anything? It didn't matter anymore. Because sometimes justice doesn't need a courtroom. Sometimes karma doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes slowly, with receipts and court dates and eviction notices and social media silence. It comes in the form of the quiet life you build while they fall apart in public. That was my revenge. Not the courtroom wins, not the frozen accounts, but the fact that I was still standing, thriving, and completely out of reach. After the letter, I didn't expect to hear anything else. I thought maybe that was her final grasp at relevance, her last attempt to insert herself back into a life she was never supposed to touch in the first place. But when someone builds their identity on someone else's downfall, they rarely know when to quit. About a week later, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. Just 5 words. "He's staying in his car." I didn't reply. I didn't need to ask who it was about. Noah had finally run out of couches to crash on, and Trudy, loyal as she was to her son, must have reached her limit. Maybe it was the screaming matches, maybe the baby crying in the background, maybe the mounting shame of neighbors whispering behind closed blinds. Either way, he had nowhere left to land. That's when the emails started. Long, desperate, rambling. He said he was sorry, said he realized everything he had done, said I was the only real thing in his life, said he missed me, said he needed help. Not once did he say he respected me, or acknowledge what he'd taken from me, or ask what I had needed all those nights I was alone, building a life for both of us while he dismantled it behind my back. That told me everything I needed to know. He didn't regret the betrayal. He regretted the outcome, the loneliness, the lack of comfort, the silence. But regret without change is just manipulation dressed up as emotion. I forwarded the email to Marcus, asked him to add it to our case files in case he tried anything else. Marcus replied with a simple thumbs up and a note. Rock bottom's a hell of a teacher. It was, apparently, because not long after, Noah tried to file a petition. He wanted to reopen the case, claimed he was mentally and emotionally unstable and that the original terms of the divorce were unfairly harsh given his current situation. He tried to use his downfall as leverage, tried to make his spiral my responsibility. Marcus didn't even flinch. We filed a response that made it clear not only had Noah been fully capable during the initial proceedings, but that every clause had been legally reviewed and voluntarily signed. The judge rejected the petition without hesitation. Noah had no case, no ground, no sympathy, and now, no excuses. I thought that would be the final chapter, but then I got one last call. Not from Noah. Not from Lila. From Trudy. Her voice was sharp, but not angry. It was tired, worn out. The sound of a woman who had finally realized the son she raised was not a victim, but a consequence. Eva, she said, I just wanted you to know, he's leaving town. He said he can't stay here, can't face people. I said nothing. She sighed. You didn't just take your money, you took his future. I closed my eyes for a second, let the silence stretch. Then I answered, No, Trudy, I didn't take his future. He gave it away. Every time he lied. Every time he looked me in the eye and told me he loved me while sleeping with my best friend. Every time he smiled and called himself a man while living off my work and throwing away our life like it was nothing. He handed his future over, piece by piece, and now he's just angry he can't borrow mine anymore. She didn't respond. Maybe she finally understood. Maybe she was too stunned to argue. Either way, it didn't matter, because I wasn't looking for her approval. I wasn't waiting to be understood anymore. I was done making myself small so others could feel comfortable. That night, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I opened my laptop, pulled up my old business plan, the one I had shelved back when Noah said it was too risky. The one I stopped working on because we needed stability. I spent hours refining it, updating it, bringing it to life again. Because now there was nothing in my way. No dead weight. No second voice telling me I should aim smaller, play safer, think less like a dreamer and more like a wife. I wasn't a wife anymore. I was me. Fully, loudly, unapologetically. A few weeks later, I launched it. The business took off faster than I expected. Turns out when you stop carrying people who secretly want you to fail, your pace picks up quick. My network supported me. My friends, my real ones, showed up with connections, referrals, encouragement. I was building something again, but this time, it was mine. Every decision, every risk, every win. I never heard from Noah again after that call. No texts, no letters, no emails. He vanished from the town like a ghost who finally realized he'd overstayed his haunting. I don't know where he went. I don't care. Lila moved in with her sister, last I heard. She gave birth a month later. No baby shower, no big celebration, just a single photo uploaded and deleted hours later. Maybe she thought it would hurt me. Maybe she thought I still wanted to be part of that world. But I didn't. That chapter was closed. That version of me no longer existed. One day, while cleaning out an old box, I found a photo of us, the three of us. Me, Noah, and Lila. I stared at it for a while. Not with sadness, not with bitterness, but with disbelief. Like looking at strangers dressed in familiar skin. I tore it in half. Not out of spite, but as a quiet ritual, a final cleansing. A moment to acknowledge how far I'd come and how far they'd fallen. Some people will never understand the weight of what they break until they're the ones picking up shattered pieces with bare hands. But by then, it's too late. And me? I was already too far ahead to hear them screaming from behind. Months passed, and my life settled into a rhythm I hadn't realized I'd been craving for years. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. There was no noise from Noah's desperation. No calls from Lila pretending to be my friend. There was just me, the quiet hum of my business growing, and the steady satisfaction of knowing I was the one who was finally free. It took time to recognize the subtle ways my world had shifted. I noticed it when I woke up in the mornings without feeling that low hum of anxiety, wondering if today would be the day Noah showed up or Lila sent me some cryptic message to stir things up. I didn't feel a rush to fill the silence with distractions. It was the first time in years I'd actually liked being alone. My apartment was full of light, full of the small touches I'd chosen for myself. No more carefully curated space to make someone else comfortable. I didn't need anyone's validation anymore. I didn't need to perform. I could just exist. And that was enough. Work was booming. I was more successful than I'd ever imagined, and I was doing it without anyone's help. I didn't have to explain why I worked late or why I traveled. I didn't have to apologize for wanting more. The money came in, and with it, a confidence that felt natural and earned. I started taking weekends off, something I hadn't done in years. I went on small trips, just me, my camera, and the open road. I spent afternoons in parks, getting to know my city again. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who never asked me to choose between them and the lies. They were the ones who stood by me when everything else seemed to be crumbling. They weren't the ones who pitied me. They were the ones who celebrated me, laughed with me, and let me vent when I needed to. They weren't perfect, but neither was I, and we didn't need to be. I even started dating again, slowly, cautiously at first. Not because I was looking for someone to replace Noah. No, I was done with that. I didn't need a man to feel whole. But because I realized there were still pieces of me I had forgotten. There was still joy to be found in connecting with someone who wasn't trying to use me as a stepping stone. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty about it. I didn't feel like I was betraying Noah by having a life outside of the one we built. The funny thing is, I didn't really think about Noah much anymore. Not in the way I once did. There was no more anger, no more questions. He wasn't even a footnote in my life. He was a ghost, an echo of a past I had no interest in revisiting. Sometimes I'd hear things through the grapevine. Friends would tell me about his struggles, how he was moving from job to job, never able to land anything permanent, how he'd been spotted drinking at dive bars, always alone, always brooding. At first, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity. Just indifference. But then I remembered the first time I saw him like that, staring at me from the corner of the room while we built a life together. I'd given everything, and in return, he'd taken it all, piece by piece. That night, I sat on my balcony and reflected on everything. The pain, the betrayal, the endless sleepless nights when I couldn't even recognize myself. But then I realized something. I had become someone I was proud of. Someone who could stand tall and speak her truth. Someone who didn't need anyone to validate her worth. I had built something from the ashes of my past, and it was real. It was mine. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. The relief of that truth settled over me like a warm blanket. For the first time, I wasn't running from my past. I wasn't trying to erase it. I was living it. I spent the next few months traveling, both for business and for myself. I visited old places that used to carry heavy memories and saw them through new eyes. I learned to let go of old grudges, not because the people who wronged me deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. I even ran into my mother one afternoon at a cafe. It was the first time I'd seen her since everything had happened. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. I didn't blame her. I was a stranger to her too. Finally, she spoke. "I know I messed up. I should have been there for you. I should have seen it sooner." I nodded. "It's okay. You didn't know. You couldn't have." She reached out to touch my hand, but I pulled it back gently. Not out of anger, but because I had learned that I didn't need her to fix me. I had already fixed myself. "I'm proud of you, Eva," she said, her voice wavering. "You're stronger than I ever realized." I smiled, but it wasn't a smile full of forgiveness or regret. It was a smile full of recognition. I had earned that strength, and that was enough. There was a sense of closure now, a kind of peace that filled the space Noah and Lila used to occupy. No more guilt, no more anger, just a quiet certainty that the life I was building was the one I had always deserved. A few weeks later, I came across a post on social media. It was from Lila, of course, but there was no cryptic message this time. She was holding the baby, her future. She had her own life now, separate from mine, and that was all I needed to see. I didn't feel anything when I looked at the photo. No anger, no resentment, just an acknowledgement that whatever part of my past she represented had been sealed away, locked in a box that no longer had any place in my present. For the first time in years, I felt a kind of relief I hadn't even known I was seeking. It was the relief of being free, free of the lies, free of the manipulation, free of them. I looked at my reflection in the window, a woman who had been broken, a woman who had been betrayed, but a woman who had stood up, dusted herself off, and made her life her own. And for the first time in a long time, I looked at that woman and smiled, because she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of them, not of what they'd done to me, and not of the future. She was finally free. Story 2. My mom kicked me out of the house 9 years ago to please my stepdad, saying she didn't want to see a reminder of my dad in her house. Now that I'm about to have my daughter, she comes back and says, "It's my obligation to name my daughter after her as a tribute." My dad passed away way too soon. He was a truck driver, and one day he had an accident. It was really sad for me, especially since my relationship with my mom was already bad at that time. She was cheating on my dad, and I knew about it. One of the reasons my dad worked so much was because he wanted to save enough money to buy a house for the two of us so he could divorce her. Technically, the house we were living in was hers. She never really cared to hide her affair, and I often saw her bring her boyfriend home after my dad passed. That guy became my stepdad. At first, he tried to act like he was cool with me, and honestly, I talked to him normally because I didn't have much choice. I figured if I had to live with him, we could at least try to get along. But that didn't last long. Little by little, he started telling my mom that he didn't want to raise a kid that wasn't his, and so on. I saw it all because they'd argue about it right in front of me. Even though my relationship with my mom wasn't great, I never thought she'd actually kick me out. Well, I was wrong. One day we had an argument because she had taken the money. I was saving and gave it to my stepdad. I called her out on it, and that's when she told me I was useless, that she didn't want me in the house anymore, and that I was just a bad reminder of my dad. She said she didn't even understand why I was still there. I thought she was just saying that because she was mad. But no. The next day, my clothes were thrown out of the house, and when I tried to go inside, my stepdad blocked the door and told me I didn't live there anymore. I called a friend, desperate, and he let me stay at his place for a while. After that, I moved to my grandma's house. At first, she wasn't exactly thrilled about having to raise me either, but it was definitely better than living with my mom and stepdad. Little by little, we got to know each other better, and she really became like a mom to me. From there, I finished high school, went to college, dated, got married, and now I'm finally about to have my daughter. I told my grandma the news. Since we talk almost every day, even though I live far away now, apparently she told my mom because the next day my mom called me to talk about it. Mind you, we hadn't spoken in 9 years, so it was definitely weird. She didn't ask anything about me and just jumped straight into talking about my daughter. That's when, out of nowhere, she told me she'd always dreamed of having a granddaughter named after her and was happy her dream would finally come true. I asked her what she was talking about, and she said, obviously I was going to name my daughter after her. For context, my great-grandmother did the same with my grandma, and my grandma did it with my mom, so I guess my mom assumed I'd do the same. I told her I wasn't going to do that and that I never planned on continuing that tradition. She asked me what I meant and if I already had a name picked out. I said no, just that I didn't want to name my daughter after her because she didn't mean anything to me anymore and hadn't been my mom for a long time. She said that was ridiculous, that everyone had respected the tradition, and it was my obligation to do the same since I wanted it to be difficult. She said she was coming to my house to settle things and demand her rights. Then she hung up. My grandma called me right after all, worked up, saying my mom was serious and had stopped by her place, saying she was coming to my house. So as I'm writing this, she's on her way. Honestly, I want her to come. I'm ready to say everything I never got to say all these years, so I'm waiting for her eagerly. When I hung up the phone, I stared at the ceiling, feeling a mix of adrenaline and anger coursing through my veins. My mom was really on her way. After 9 years of silence, she thought she could just show up, make demands, and act like she still had any power over me. The nerve of her was unbelievable. But at the same time, the chance to finally say everything I had held back for so long gave me a bitter sense of anticipation. My wife walked into the room, noticing the tension on my face. "Is she really coming?" she asked, already knowing the answer. I nodded, trying to keep my anger in check. She thinks she has the right to demand something like she's been a mother to me or even a presence in my life since she kicked me out. Now, suddenly, because I'm having a daughter, she thinks she can come in here and dictate what I do in my own family. But this time, things are going to be different, I vented. My wife hugged me. "You're not alone in this anymore. We'll face this together." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I knew the next few hours were going to be tough, but I was determined not to back down. She was going to learn that she no longer had any control over my life. A few hours passed, and then the sound of a car pulling up in front of the house echoed through the room. I went to the window and saw my mom's old car. The engine was still rumbling, like she was ready to storm into my life as a furious whirlwind. My mom stepped out of the car, carrying the same arrogant look she always had. Though time had left its mark, she looked worn down, like life hadn't been as kind as she expected after kicking me out. And next to her, of course, was my stepdad. The root of it all. He had that same smug look as if he had won, as if he was the boss of the situation. But this time, things are going to be different. They knocked on the door like they had the right to be there. I opened it, staring them down without a word. "So, are you going to let us in? Where are we going to settle this here?" My mom snapped without even a hello. Her authoritative tone made my blood boil. I wasn't the teenager she could manipulate or intimidate anymore. "Come in," I said firmly. "But it's not going to go the way you think." They walked in and sat on the couch as if nothing had changed, as if this was a normal family reunion. My stepdad didn't look me in the eye, but he kept that smug grin on his face like he knew my mom would bend me to her will. Just like she always did. So she started crossing her legs and leaning forward. "Let's get straight to the point. Of course you're going to follow the tradition and name your daughter after me. That's what's expected. And I'm here to make sure you do the right thing." I laughed, a bitter, angry laugh. "Do you have no shame after kicking me out of your house, calling me useless, and taking everything I had? Now you show up and think you have the right to demand anything. What have you done for me in the last 9 years? Not a single call, not a single gesture. And now, because I'm having a daughter, you think you can waltz back in here and tell me what to do? You mean absolutely nothing to me." She looked shocked, like she had never imagined I would dare to confront her this way. "I'm her mother. You owe me respect. If you think you're just going to ignore our family's tradition? I cut her off. "What tradition? The tradition of destroying your own family. Because that's exactly what you did when you decided to kick me out to please your husband. You chose him. You always chose him. Even when you were cheating on my dad. Remember that? The man who died and you couldn't wait to bring this guy into the house?" I pointed to my stepdad, who still had that smug look on his face. My mom tried to speak, but I didn't let her. "You think I don't know what really happened? My dad worked himself to the bone trying to get us out of that house, saving money so I could have a future. And what were you doing, meeting your boyfriend while he was on the road? Killing himself to support this family. You always knew what you were doing. And now, because I'm having a daughter, you think you can come back and demand that I honor you? I owe you absolutely nothing." She stood up, furious, her hands shaking. "You don't know what you're talking about. I did what was best for me and you. You've always been ungrateful, always choosing your father, even after he died. I chose my father because he was the only one who truly loved me. He died trying to give me a better future while you destroyed everything he built. And as for your husband," I turned to my stepdad, "he's a coward who never did anything for me except throw me out of the house like an unwanted dog." He finally spoke, his voice full of disdain. "I did what I had to do. You were never my son, and you never would be. We were all better off once you left." "Better off for you," I corrected, "but now I'm not going anywhere. This is my house, my family, and you two have no place here." My mom tried to step toward me, but my wife appeared in the room holding my hand, looking at her firmly. "You two need to leave," my wife said, calm but strong. My mom looked at me as if expecting me to change my mind. "You're going to regret this," she said, her voice full of anger. You'll thank me one day. No, I won't. I have everything I need right here. And you two were not part of it. With that, I opened the door, and without another word, they walked out. As soon as the door closed, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders for the first time in years. I felt like I had finally faced the ghosts of my past. I looked at my wife and smiled, knowing I had done the right thing. Now we're ready to start our real life. And this time, no one was going to tell me otherwise. Months had passed since that initial confrontation with my mother, and while I had hoped that was the end of it, it turned out to be just the beginning. At first, I didn't think much of it when my family's calls became less frequent. I figured they were busy, or maybe things had naturally shifted after my falling out with my mother. But when my cousins stopped texting and invitations to family gatherings disappeared, I knew something was up. One day, my aunt, who I always had a good relationship with, sent me a short message asking if we could talk. Her tone was strange, and when I called her, she got straight to the point. Can you explain what's going on between you and your mother? She's been saying awful things about you to the entire family. I was stunned for a moment. Although deep down, I wasn't entirely surprised. I knew my mother wouldn't take well to losing control over me, but to slander me to the entire family, that was the new level of cruelty. What exactly has she been saying? I asked already, bracing myself for whatever twisted version of events she had concocted. My aunt sighed, sounding uncomfortable, even repeating it. She's telling everyone you kicked her out of your house, refused to name your daughter after her out of pure spite, and that you've been an ungrateful, horrible son ever since. She's making it sound like you abandoned her after everything she did for you. That hit me hard. I had spent my entire life trying to survive her emotions, abandonment, and constant disdain. And now she was painting me as the villain to everyone. I took a deep breath, trying to control the anger rising inside me, and decided it was time to set the record straight. Let me tell you what really happened, I said calmly. And so I laid out the entire story. I told her everything from the time when my father was still alive, and my mother was openly cheating on him with a man who is now my stepdad, to how she treated me like an unwanted reminder of my father. I explained how she had thrown me out of the house to please her new husband, and how I had been forced to fend for myself, first with friends and then with my grandmother. My aunt was silent as I spoke, processing every detail. When I finished, she let out a long sigh, this time filled with understanding. I had no idea. Your mother never told this side of the story. I can't believe she kept all this hidden. Of course she didn't, I replied. She's always known how to twist things to make herself the victim. But I'm done letting her control the narrative from that conversation. The truth began to spread within the family. One by one, relatives reached out to me, wanting to hear my side of things. Each time I explained everything, holding nothing back. And the more people learned, the more they began to see through my mother's lies. Slowly but surely, she lost the grip she had over our family's perception of her. The turning point came when my grandmother, the most respected figure in the family, decided to step in. She called me and asked me to visit. When I arrived at her house, she looked serious, deep in thought. We sat down in the living room, and she began. I want to hear what's really going on, because your mother has told me terrible things. But I know there's more to this story. I told her everything, just as I had with the others. But this time, and in even more detail, I spoke about how my father had sacrificed his health and his life to support us, while my mother betrayed him behind his back. I described how I had been kicked out of the house and left to fend for myself, and how, after years of silence, she had reappeared, only to demand something, as if I still owed her anything. My grandmother sat in silence, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and understanding. When I finished, she took a few moments before speaking. I knew something was wrong, she finally said. Your mother never wanted to talk about what really happened. Now everything makes sense. After that conversation, my grandmother, the most respected person in our family, took a firm stand. She confronted my mother directly, demanding answers about everything she had done. For the first time, my mother had no escape. Her carefully crafted lies had crumbled, and the support she had once enjoyed from the family began to disappear. There were no more excuses left. From that point on, my mother stopped attending family gatherings. The woman who had always been the center of attention was now isolated. And as for me, I finally found peace. Over time, my wife and I were able to focus on our life together, raising our daughter with love and respect, the very things I had never truly experienced from my own mother. Every now and then I reflect on everything that happened. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about the concept of what a mother is supposed to be. We grow up believing that mothers are sacred figures who love us unconditionally and will do anything to protect us. But sometimes reality is far different. Being a mother isn't just about giving birth. It's about being there, supporting, loving, and making sacrifices for your child. My biological mother failed in every one of those aspects. Today, I'm at peace. My mother hasn't spoken to me since, and honestly, I don't miss her. I have a family who truly loves me, who supports me, and who stands by me through everything. My grandmother has remained a strong, loving presence in our lives over time. The void my mother left has been filled by the genuine love of those who truly care. If I've learned anything from all of this, it's that family is more than just blood. Family is about who stands by your side, who respects you, and who supports you no matter what. And now I'm finally living that truth. Story 3. Daughter informed me that she didn't want me at her wedding because her family felt I didn't appear wealthy enough, so I happily stayed away. However, they were unaware that I was the one who secured the venue for them. So I sent a letter delivering this unfortunate news instead. Hello, reader. This is my first time posting here since I need some help, and it's a bit urgent. This matter is too personal to share with my friends, so I'm posting it here. I have been a single father to my daughter and have raised her on my own since she was born. My wife unfortunately passed away while I was pregnant with her. She had an aneurysm in her sleep, and by the time I woke up, she was gone. Since then, I have raised my daughter on my own and have honestly sacrificed a lot, something that other single parents can also attest to. I'm not saying that she owes anything to me because I'm her father, but a little appreciation would be nice. Unfortunately, she ended up telling me that she did not want me to attend her wedding a couple of days ago because apparently, according to her fiancé and his family, I did not look like I was rich enough to fit in with the kind of people that would be present there. That was incredibly hurtful, so I did something really underhanded as well. That's really not in my nature, but I just couldn't help myself. All of this started 2 years ago when she first started dating Steve. She met him through friends, from what I know, and he belongs to quite a wealthy family. His parents own one of the top real estate firms in the state, and they're pretty much rolling in money. He looks the part as well, always dressed in luxury brands from head to toe. And he owns 3 cars himself. In comparison, I obviously look like a peasant since I'm just an economics professor in college. I do make a decent amount of money, and it has been good enough for me and my daughter. That's how I've been able to pay all the bills and the rent and afford to be able to raise her single-handedly for the past 25 years at least. It used to be good enough for us until she started dating Steve, and then things started changing and getting weird between us. Just for the record, I never had a problem with her relationship with Steve or him as a person until recently. Even though after the first time we met, my daughter called me up later on to tell me that I needed to start changing certain things about my house so that it looked better. She had said that the fact that most of the furniture in my house looked really old was pretty embarrassing for her, since she had been to Steve's parents' mansion, and it was crazy how beautiful and shiny everything was. She wanted me to at least put an effort into making my home look better. We had a fight after the first meeting because I did not think that there was anything wrong with the way my house looked. The fact that certain things were really old just meant that they had character. I did not want a shiny, glamorous lifestyle like Steve or his parents because I knew that I could not afford it, and I wanted to live within my means. I was perfectly happy with how my life was and did not have any complaints, so she had no reason to be complaining about it either. Some of the things that she wanted me to replace, like some furniture and stuff, had actually been picked out by my late wife, and I really valued them. We got into a fight back then, and I told her that if she was so embarrassed of me, then maybe she shouldn't have introduced me to her rich boyfriend in the first place. She realized that she was being a jerk and apologized to me later, and we were able to patch things up. But after that, she never brought Steve over to my place, and I only met him a handful of times. I met his parents once when they got engaged, and I attended the party that they threw. Even then, my daughter had a lot to say about the way that I was dressed, and she said that it was an engagement party, so I should have put more effort into how I dressed. But according to me, I was dressed perfectly fine and not stupid. I could tell that her real problem was the fact that I was not dressed in luxury brands and was just wearing things that I could afford. But I guess she was too afraid to say it anyway. I try not to mind that. And even though she had started being very distant from me ever since she had introduced Steve to me, I still tried to keep in touch with her. But then 3 days ago, she visited me and told me that after Steve and his parents had met me at the engagement party, they did not think that I would fit in with the crowd that would be present at their wedding, since it would be mostly their friends and other business associates who worked with his parents. But none of her family members. Since Steve's parents were funding most of it, she thought that it would be better for her to respect their wishes. She even said that she would have a private ceremony later on, and I would be invited to that. But for now, she just wanted me to understand where she was coming from, because ultimately, she did not want me to feel out of place. I was very hurt when she said that, and I started crying. But then she got really exasperated and said that there was nothing worth crying over. This was just a fact that I did not look rich enough to fit in there, and she did not want me to embarrass either myself or her. She told me that she had hoped that I would understand, but I was just being selfish by not caring about her image in front of her in-laws. Once I stopped crying, I told her to get out of my house and never come back. After days of thinking about what to do after that devastating conversation with my daughter, I realized it was time to act. I had already sacrificed my entire life for her, and the least I deserved was respect. However, the fact that my appearance or lifestyle was enough for her to discard me without a second thought made me question everything. It was clear that she no longer saw value in the father who raised her alone, but instead in the image she could project to her new wealthy in-laws. I had secured their wedding venue through an old acquaintance as a surprise gift. I wanted to see my daughter happy and knew that place would be perfect for her dream wedding. But now I realized that was a mistake. It was time to correct it. I wrote a short, direct letter to the venue manager canceling the reservation. I used firm words explaining that due to family reasons, the event could no longer take place there. I also requested that he not mention the reason to anyone except me. This would leave my daughter and her fiancé in a difficult position, especially given how last minute it was to find another luxurious venue. After all, the wedding was just weeks away. Days passed until one day I got a frantic phone call. It was my daughter. She didn't start with a hi or how are you. She got straight to the point. Dad, what did you do? The wedding venue got canceled. Steve is furious. His parents are panicking, and now we have nowhere to go. Do you have any idea what this means? Her voice was a mix of anger and panic, and I could almost picture her red face on the other end of the line. Oh, now you call me Dad, I replied calmly. I thought I wasn't good enough to be at the wedding, but apparently I'm good enough to fix your problems when things go wrong. This isn't a joke, she yelled, sounding on the verge of a breakdown. You have to fix this. They're pressuring me. If we don't have this wedding as planned, Steve might even call everything off. His parents will think I'm a failure. You don't understand what's at stake here. No, dear, I interrupted, still calm. You don't understand. I spent 25 years of my life putting you first. I dealt with all the hardships of being a single father and gave you everything I could, made sacrifices you'll never see, and what do I get in return? The humiliation of being excluded from the most important moment of your life. Because I don't look rich enough for you and your fiancé. No, that's not going to happen. She started to cry, but this time her tears didn't move me. Something inside me had changed. But Dad, I don't want it to come to this. I was just trying to balance things, make everyone happy. It's not just about you. It's about what they think of me. And what do you think of me? I interrupted again. Don't I matter anymore? You'd rather please a family you barely know than value the one who has been by your side your whole life. I refuse to be treated like garbage. You made the choice to exclude me. Now live with the consequences. She was silent. The crying had stopped. But I knew she was thinking about everything I said. Dad, please. I know I messed up. She started begging, but I was already resolved. It's time for you to face reality, daughter. I'm not going to fix this for you. You'll have to learn to deal with the consequences of your choices. I hung up the phone, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own life again. She wanted so badly to distance herself from me to please a wealthy, elitist family. Then she could stay with them. She was going to have to weather the storm she created. The following weeks were absolute chaos. I heard through mutual acquaintances that the wedding, which was supposed to be the event of the year, was a disaster. They couldn't find another luxury venue in time and ended up having a simple, rushed ceremony far below the standards Steve's parents had envisioned. The humiliation they tried to impose on me came back to them in a way I could have never planned. My daughter tried calling me several times after that day, but I didn't answer. I needed space. I deserve peace. Even with the wedding disaster, she had chosen that path. She chose to please people who didn't truly know her, rather than value the one who had always been there for her. A few months later, I received a message. It was a photo of my daughter and Steve, accompanied by a brief note. "We're getting divorced." There was no emotion in the words, just a cold report. It seemed that everything she had sacrificed in the name of social status and a glamorous life had crumbled. I didn't feel joy when I saw that, but I didn't feel sadness either. She had made her choices, and now she was paying for them. As for me, I started reconnecting with old friends, traveling, and rediscovering life beyond the role of being a father. As for my daughter, I don't know what the future holds for her. Maybe one day she'll understand that value isn't measured by appearance or wealth, but until then, I have my own life to take care of. After months of no contact, the peace I so desperately needed had finally started to fill the spaces in my life. The loneliness that haunted me at first had gradually been replaced by a sense of control. For the first time in a long while, I was prioritizing myself. I traveled, reconnected with old friends, and dove into new professional projects. My home, which once embarrassed my daughter, had now become a sanctuary where I could reflect on everything that had happened. Then one quiet morning, I heard the unexpected sound of the doorbell. When I opened the door, there she was, my daughter. Her face was marked by tears, which she was clearly trying to hold back. She looked so different from the woman I threw out of my house months ago. The silence between us was heavy. I could see the nervousness in her eyes. "Dad, can I come in?" she asked, her voice weak and shaky. I observed her for a moment, battling the lingering hurt. A part of me wanted to send her away, but another part, the one that would always be a father, decided that maybe it was time to hear her out. I stepped aside, making room for her to enter. She sat down on the couch that my late wife and I had picked out years ago, and for a moment, the weight of nostalgia felt overwhelming. I sat across from her, saying nothing, waiting for her to begin a divorce. "Steve," she finally said, her eyes fixed on the floor. I already knew that, of course, but hearing those words come from her made it all the more real. She took a deep breath, as if trying to gather the courage to continue. I realized I made a huge mistake. Her voice trembled, full of regret. I let money, status, and other people's opinions control who I was. I did horrible things, especially to you, the way I treated you. I don't even know how I could have been so blind. Dad. She finally looked up, her eyes red from crying. When Steve left me, when everything fell apart, I realized that what truly mattered wasn't how I dressed or how much money I had, but who was there for me. And no one has ever been there for me more than you. I stayed silent, letting her words flow. She needed to say it all, and I needed to hear it. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she continued, "but I'm here because I want to apologize. I want to tell you that I regret everything. You've always been there for me, and I treated you like a stranger. I was ungrateful. I didn't know how to appreciate the man who sacrificed so much for me. Dad, please forgive me. I need you now. I need you to teach me how to be strong, to be independent, and to not rely on anyone but myself. I want to learn how to make money on my own, to become someone you can be proud of. Not for my wealth, but for the person I can become." I saw the sincerity in her words. She wasn't trying to fix things for superficial reasons. She was genuine, and that touched something deep inside me. The hurt was still there, alive, but my love for her, the same love that made me raise her alone all these years, was stronger. "I forgive you," I said after a long pause. She sighed as if a mountain had been lifted off her shoulders. "But know that forgiveness doesn't erase the pain you caused. We'll have to work on that. Now, as for teaching you about money, business, and independence, I can do that. But you have to be ready to learn that life is more than wealth and status. It's about doing things with integrity and knowing how to value the people who stand by your side, no matter the situation. She nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. Over the next few weeks, we started reconnecting slowly, rebuilding the relationship she had nearly destroyed. I taught her everything I knew about finances, investments, and business. I showed her how to manage money smartly, live within her means, and, most importantly, how to build a solid and stable life without depending on others. She followed my advice, and soon she opened her own small business. It wasn't anything grand at first, but it was hers, and she built it with dedication and humility. I could see she was changing, finally letting go of the illusion that money and status were everything. Today, things are better than I could have imagined. My daughter and I have reconnected. And now she not only respects me as her father, but also as her mentor. She realized that true friends are your parents, the ones who support you even when the rest of the world turns its back on you. "Thank you, Dad," she said, one day, with a genuine smile. "If I've learned anything, it's that money comes and goes. But family is what really matters, and I'll never forget that again." Seeing my daughter grow, not just as a person but also as a professional, was the greatest reward I could have asked for. She finally understood that it's not money that defines who we are, but strength of character, and I couldn't be more proud. After teaching my daughter everything I could and watching her grow both as a person and as a professional, I knew it was time to let her follow her own path. It was her time to shine. Over time, she truly became a self-made woman, independent and, most importantly, no longer seeking to impress anyone. She built her own business from the ground up, something she could be proud of, free from the need to rely on others or the pressure to conform to others' expectations. Months turned into years, and I watched from a distance as she embarked on her journey of maturity. My daughter not only achieved financial independence, but also emotional strength. She stopped trying to please people who didn't matter and began to focus on what truly made sense in her life, her happiness and fulfillment. Then one day she came to my house looking a bit nervous, but with a different light in her eyes. It was the kind of happiness that comes when you truly find peace within yourself. She told me she was in a serious relationship. At first I was cautious, remembering everything that happened with Steve, but she quickly reassured me. This time it was different. "Dad, I want to introduce you to someone," she said, smiling. "His name is Marcos. He's successful, but more importantly, he's a good person and his family is too. They're amazing. They're humble, respectful, and from the beginning, they've only wanted to support me. They don't care about status. They care about who I am as a person. When I finally met Marcos, I was impressed. He was indeed successful, but what struck me most was his humility and kindness. Unlike her ex, Marcos didn't feel the need to flaunt his wealth or status. He valued simple things and, most importantly, my daughter's happiness. When I met his parents, I felt the same. They were warm, genuine, and down-to-earth, people without any pretensions or judgments. They added so much to my daughter's life in ways I couldn't have imagined. At last, she had found the balance she had always sought, and I couldn't have been happier for her. Seeing my daughter smile again, truly and deeply, was the best gift I could have received. The weight that had once burdened her was gone. She was now a strong, independent woman in a relationship with someone who truly loved and respected her. Someone who came from a family that treated her with the kindness and respect she had always deserved. Today, I continue on my own path with a sense of fulfillment. I couldn't be prouder of the woman my daughter has become. A true father doesn't seek revenge on his own child. No matter how painful the journey may have been, what a real father wants is his growth. To see his daughter learn from our mistakes and become a better person. I let her go and watched her blossom. I know I did the right thing. There is no greater joy than seeing your daughter happy and at peace with life. She has learned that what matters isn't what others think, but how she feels about herself. And that, to me, is the greatest victory. Now I look to the future with peace of mind, knowing I've done my job and that my daughter is prepared to face the world on her own.